to The Book of Life, a show about Jewish books, music, film, and web. I'm Heidi Estrin. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida. Additional support comes from the Association of Jewish Libraries. Freefall is Anna Levine's teen novel about a girl in the Israeli army. Jodie's Hanukkah dig is Anna's picture book about an archaeological dig in Modi'in. In 2009, the Association of Jewish Libraries named Freefall a Sidney Taylor Honor Book, and Jodie a notable book. Anna traveled all the way from Israel to Chicago, Illinois, to be at the awards banquet. So, Anna Levine, congratulations, first of all. Mazel tov. You just got recognized for 2 different books in the same year. Very exciting. Silver medal for Freefall and notable book for Jodie's Hanukkah dig. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us how these 2 books came into existence.
Well, I moved to Israel when I was in my early 20s.
From where?
From Canada. I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I grew up in Montreal, Quebec.
Uh-huh.
From a very Zionist family. So my sister made Aliyah in the 70s, and my brother also late 70s, and then it was my turn, and I went to a kibbutz up on the northern border of Israel. And that was during the 80s, and it wasn't an easy time. And my boyfriend then, now husband, was in the reserve forces that went up into Lebanon, and most of the women stayed on the kibbutz, back on the kibbutz at that time when we were taking care of everything. And then my husband came back, and we decided that we wanted to leave and move to the city, so we went to Jerusalem, and that's where my boys were raised. So I went from knowing what it was like to being the wife of a soldier to being the mother of 2 soldiers. When it was time for my sons to be drafted, they got their notices, and they'd sit in the living room with their friends, and they'd be discussing what kind of units they wanted to be in. And I noticed that the girls were as much involved in the discussion as the boys, and I thought, this is really interesting. And I asked one of them, so is this like new Israeli feminism? And she said, no way. Guy wants to carry my kit bag, let him knock himself out. This is part of just something that we have to do, and they really have a certain maturity about it. And I decided that this is something that I really, really have to write about. Of course, there was the problem of figuring out how to translate the Israeli military experience for an American audience. And that was a challenge, but it was lots of fun to do.
Well, that's interesting that proved to be such a challenge. So what was so hard about it to translate that?
Okay. For instance, there's a lot of words that have come into our vocabulary. Like the soldiers, the boys and the girls, they can get what's called an after, pronounced in Hebrew after, in which they get out in the afternoon and they spend the night, and then the next morning they have to go back to the army. So it wasn't only a word, it was kind of an idea. And the same thing, even more so, they have what's called a chamshush, which is a Chamishi, Shishi, Shabbat, which is a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday that they can come out. So I was thinking, okay, so that would be a it just doesn't translate into English, and it's this idea that. So there were a lot of nuances like that, and I realized that translation really isn't just finding the right words, but it's a whole cultural idea that you have to capture and bring over.
Do you write in English or in Hebrew?
I write in English. Mm-hmm. But I speak, at home we sort of speak a mix of Hebrew and English, and during my day I use Hebrew a lot.
Mm-hmm. So when you're saying it was a challenge in translation, you're talking about literally translation. You're not just talking about the concepts. Like first I thought you meant like that the army experience was so different you had to translate the experience. But it sounds like you're talking about literal translation of words.
I'm talking really about both of it, because a lot of that cultural experience has the words that go with it. So you have to find the words and the culture and bring it into an audience that would, to allow your audience to understand it.
Uh-huh. So you really wrote it aimed at a North American audience.
I did. Mm-hmm. I did.
And why? Well, I mean, obviously you are from North America, so therefore you would write it for a North American audience. But why did you feel that it was important to tell a North American audience about the Israeli army experience?
Well, because I don't only focus on the Israeli army experience. I focus on an Israeli girl within her family situation, the friendships that she has, how she falls in love. And what I really wanted to show was, Israeli teens, they're really so much like American teens, except we have this one little extra thing about us. But it doesn't identify us. It's not the only thing that categorizes us. It's just part also of who we are. Mm-hmm. So my message really is, hey, we're teens. We love, we hate, we argue, just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Cool. We've got Barbara here, who's another friend of mine who's a blogger and blogs about Jewish children's books. Do you have any questions you want to ask, Anna?
We were actually just talking about Jodie's Hanukkah dig, and I was saying that I just love Jodie. I think she's spunky and sparky, and I was asking Anna if she is indeed Jodie, so maybe she can share her thoughts about that with us.
Well, Jodie... the Jodie's Hanukkah dig is about a little girl that always wanted to be an archaeologist, and she goes to a dig in Modi'in during Hanukkah. And for me, it was important that it's Modi'in and it's Hanukkah because it sort of strengthens Jodie's identification with her Jewish roots as well as her Israeli roots. And first of all, if you give me a pail and a shovel and some dirt, I'm just like the happiest person ever because that's still in me. I like that kind of stuff. But there's also the element of discovery. And I've been in Israel for over 20 years, but I feel all the time that I'm discovering new aspects of it. Like I said at the beginning, being the wife of a soldier and then being a mother of soldiers, it's two very different things. And, having the archaeology as part of my life, from my kitchen window in Mevaseret, I see the Castel, which is an historical site, archaeological site as well. So I love this mix, and I love constantly discovering. So yes, part of Jodie is in me.
These two books are both set in Israel, but other than that, they're pretty different in terms of the audience they're aimed at, in terms of the type of action. But what ties them together, do you think?
I think what ties them together is really my love of the country. Like Jodie, I just want to keep exploring different aspects of it. So whether it's, my son's being in the army and seeing that side of Israel. Right now, my next book that I'm working on now is called Curtain Call, and it's about a religious girl in Jerusalem who joins a drama troupe, which is secular actors. And so you have this mix of the religious and the secular and how you can bring that together. And that's part of what I'm learning now, too, as I'm in Israel and I'm seeing all the way these different communities, often how we try and be tolerant with each other, but we end up kind of missing, which, there's all the good intention, the kavanah tova, but it doesn't always work. So I'm always finding new things in Israel that I say, like, wow, I have to think about this. And writing gives me a chance to explore my thoughts.
Do you think that your writing about Israel is very different from the way Israelis write about Israel? Now, these books, you're aiming at a non-Israeli audience. Have you written for an Israeli audience?
No, I haven't.
That's interesting. So,
because I'm a foreigner. Yesterday when I was here, I met some friends that I haven't seen in 20 years. And one of the men who was in my garin, he turned to me and he said, "Oh, Anna, you're such an Israeli." And I laughed and I said, I have to come to America to be told that I'm Israeli because when I'm in Israel, as soon as I open my mouth, they always say, "So how long have you been here?" Because my accent is so strong, and I guess also my mannerisms, that I'm just tagged as an American, even though I'm Canadian. Right. I'm tagged as an American over there.
Mm-hmm. Are your books available in Israel?
Yeah, now Jodie's Hanukkah Dig and Freefall are both in Steinmatzky's, which is great, which is pretty much the only English chain.
So what kind of response do your English, Israel setting, aimed at North American readers books get from Israeli readers who do read them?
One of the bloggers asked me what's the hardest thing about writing, and I said it's the loneliness, and not so much the loneliness when I'm in my office and myself, because that I love. It's the loneliness of when your books come out and they aren't on the shelves, and you have no one to share that joy with, because that's something that's really hard for me, because the Israeli public doesn't really know me and is not really exposed to my books. So I have to come here in order to go into a bookstore and say, "Wow, that's mine."
Uh-huh.
Now, I'm just fascinated by the discussion, and I love to hear you talk about what it's like to be a writer who's so popular in America and what it's like for you in Israel, and I'm inspired to come visit you.
Oh, please. Everyone's always welcome to come visit. I always like to have an excuse to play tourist. So.
I I just want to go on one of those digs with you.
Right.
Have you been on a dig yourself?
Well, I was just telling Barbara that my publisher for the Jodie's Hanukkah dig is in Israel now. And I wanted to try and convince her for a third book because I already have a contract for my second one. So I took her to the Temple Mount dig because what happened was a few years back they drilled a hole underneath the temple to make an exit, and they had all this dirt, what they thought was dirt, and they just threw it on the side. And it turns out that there's all these incredible archaeological finds from the first temple period, and so now it's being collected in buckets, and they depend on the help of volunteers. So you go and you get your bucket and you pour it onto the sifter, and then it's wet water sifting, not dry sifting, and so you put water on it to clean off the dirt, and you find, my publisher found a handle to a piece of pottery, and she was really excited, and somebody else found a coin when we were there. So it's really what I love about archaeology in Israel, that it's not some site somewhere that you go to. It's right there where you are.